Good evening. Good evening to the brave candidates who have come here in the snowstorm, and the equally brave, but perhaps more surprisingly brave public who's joined us, and thanks to those who are watching online. This evening we have the privilege of hearing from a number of Ninth Ward residents who have generously put themselves forward to be candidates for the vacancy that arose when Councilmember Cicely Fleming resigned effective, the day before yesterday. So it's information I'm still coming to terms with and learning how to cope with. Under state law, when a vacancy occurs...
Recording in progress.
At some point, I will learn whether I'm supposed to stop and let the unearthly voice do that and then continue as if it didn't happen, or talk over her. I don't know. In any case, under state law, when a vacancy occurs with this timing, the mayor makes an appointment subject to the confirmation of the city council, and then that person who is appointed serves in the role until the April 2023 election. So that's a period of time where ordinarily we don't have city council elections in Evanston. So there'll be just the Ninth Ward council member will be up for election at that time, together with candidates for school board and the Oakton Community College Board of Trustees and so forth. So all of the people who are sitting here, as well as one other person who I've not been able to connect with, notwithstanding repeated efforts, put forth their names, are willing to serve in this role, are willing to give of themselves to their city, and I think all of them deserve our appreciation, and all of them are to be commended for that. But I think they're also doing it because they recognize this is an exciting time for the city. It's a time of really great opportunity where the things that we have the capability of achieving, if we work effectively together, would make a really, really big difference for the community. So I think that's reflected in the interest we see. And I just want to say again, thanks to all of you. Tonight's not a debate. It's not supposed to be a high pressure environment. It's an opportunity for all of you to introduce yourselves to the public, an opportunity for us to continue the dialogue that we've been having in correspondence and offline as well. So what we're going to do is everyone's going to have an opportunity to introduce themselves, say whatever they want to say in opening comments. They'll have up to 4 minutes to do that. Then I'm going to ask 2 questions. Everyone's going to have the opportunity to answer each of those questions for up to 3 minutes. I'll tell you what the questions are now, so no one feels like whoever gets called on first is on the spot. And we'll do the first question from my left over to my right. Second question back. Third question back once again. And again, the time is yours. Do what you want with it. But I would encourage folks not to talk about each other and not to view this as a antagonistic campaign, but just to talk about yourself, your qualifications, your vision, and what you think you have to offer to the ward and the city. So the 2 questions that will follow the introduction are as follows. And I should say these were sourced from the community. We had a web forum, and there were 20 plus questions that were submitted by the community. I've done my best to kind of combine them when possible and sort of take take questions that came up in different guises multiple times. So the first one is this: how do you plan to communicate with the residents of the Ninth Ward and engage the residents of the Ninth Ward? The questioner goes on to point out that you've got real big shoes to fill in that respect. Councilmember Fleming has been extraordinarily communicative and extraordinarily available and accessible and a really dogged advocate for the ward, so much so that in her own description of the reasons for walking away, it was almost too much. And so how do you plan to maintain a level of communication and engagement and work-life balance that allows you to do the job and find a balance and a stability and a joy in doing so? The second question is shorter. What's one issue that you're most excited to lead on? Why is that issue important to you and to the city? And how would you plan to make progress on that issue? As I said, you'll start with an introduction of up to 4 minutes, then you'll have up to 3 minutes on the other questions. There's no expectation you'll fill the time. I just wanted to give sort of longer periods so people don't feel like they're trying to pretzel themselves into a short amount of time. But if you say what you would like to say in far less the amount of time, no one will judge you for that either. In fact, in my experience, people will probably thank you for that. I'll give you a 15-second warning and then politely cut you off. Those of you who watch council meetings know that I'm not very good at politely cutting people off, but maybe you'll have practice tonight. And with that, we'll take it away. So again, starting with Mr. Derakaris, we'll just go from my left down to the right, 4 minutes for an introduction. Thanks very much to all of you, and take it away, Juan.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Hola, mi nombre es Juan Carlos. Llegué a Evanston en 1993 como estudiante en Northwestern. Tengo 14 años que vivo en el Distrito 9 con mi familia. He estudiado, vivido y trabajado aquí en Evanston durante los últimos 29 años. Hi, my name is Juan Carlos. I came to Evanston in 1993 as a student at Northwestern, and I've lived in the 9th Ward for 14 years with my family. I've lived, studied, and worked in Evanston for the past 29 years. Desde que llegué aquí, he estado involucrado en varios grupos comunitarios. Soy el vicepresidente de Evanston Latinos. Somos una organización que he formado para servir la comunidad latino durante la pandemia. Since moving here, I've been involved in various community groups. I'm the vice president of Evanston Latinos. We are a nonprofit that was formed to serve the Latinx community during this pandemic. Soy miembro del Comité de Planificación de Next Steps Evanston. Ofrecemos clases en equidad y antirracismo a familias en Distrito 65. I'm a member of the Planning Committee of Next Steps Evanston. We work to provide equity and anti-racism training to District 65 families. Mis hijos van a la escuela en Oakton. En Oakton estoy el vicepresidente de la PTA, el enlace para el programa de TWI, encargo del jardín y representante de la escuela para PEP, el proyecto de equidad para todos los PTAs in Evanston. My kids attend Oakton Elementary. There I've served as a PTA vice president, the liaison to the TWI program, the garden committee chair, and the PEP rep for Oakton. That's the PTA equity project. Otros en la comunidad me conocen como uno de los fundadores de Evanston Skates. Como un grupo, nosotros ayudamos a traer un lugar para patinar a Ridgeville y ahora estamos trabajando con la ciudad en el parque de patinaje que va a venir al parque de Twigs. And others might know me as one of the founders of Evanston Skates. As a group, we've brought a skate spot to the Ridgeville Park District, and we're currently working with the city on the new Evanston Skate Park that's coming to Twigs Park. Y mis vecinos me conocen como el dueño de la casa con las gallinas y el jardín grande. Hice muchas cosas diferentes y trabajé con muchas personas para apoyar varios proyectos en nuestra comunidad. So my neighbors probably know me as the guy who lives on the corner, who has the large garden with all the chickens. And I've done a lot of different things in the community, and I've worked with a lot of different people to help our community. Sería un privilegio servir a nuestro distrito en esta capacidad, and it'd be my privilege to serve the 9th Ward as their representative.
Thank you very much. Ms. Campbell.
Good evening, everyone. I first arrived in Evanston March 1995 with a cat, a bicycle, and a suitcase. I needed furniture. I bought a beautiful old desk at Hinman in Maine, and when the owner lent me his dolly to wheel the desk nearly a mile home, I knew I was in a scrappy and compassionate town. I had moved from Southern California, a land with no sidewalks, no front porches, and where you do not know your neighbors. I'm a first-gen college graduate, the only child of teenagers. My first house was a converted chicken coop. In my teens, my mom fell into addiction and homelessness. I'm familiar with poverty and what correlates with it. Education became my salvation. I went to college, and then I didn't leave for 20 years. I worked mostly at Northwestern and UIC, and then I moved to college counseling and teaching and spent another 4 years at Royce-Moore. In that time, I got married, I bought a house, I started a family. Evanston has been a place for me to level up. I want it to still be so for my children and for yours. Just as pandemic hit nearly 2 years ago, I was told to launch a college counseling program for middle schoolers. My heart broke. Filling seventh graders with anxiety over perfect A's and the urgent need to become a world-class oboe player for an outside shot at Stanford seemed patently unhealthy to me. It was clearly time to make hard pivots. My counseling needed to be about college access for first-gen high-need students. I now support several ETHS student athletes as an AmeriCorps college counselor at Beyond Sports Foundation. After 40 years, I finally chased down my own dream. This last year, I can confirm that 15 minutes a day is all you need to write a novel in 1 year. As a writer, educator, public servant, wife, and mother, I've needed to ask questions that get to the heart of things and then listen really hard. I've needed to collect others' stories and take good care of them, all of them. To affirm that most decisions are dilemmas with no one answer being ideal, just less terrible than others. And to be resourceful, moral, and generous with what I have or I have access to. I'm green to the ways of local government, but I have transferable skills in spades. Rebecca Solnit says that social justice starts with environmental justice. This thought guides my own thinking about our city. Right now, Evanston seems like two cities, one old and on the ground and one new reaching for the clouds. Are they as disconnected as they seem? At what consequence? The old city can compost, the new one can't. How might Evanston create a culture of composting? How might we create a neighborhood composting set of hotspots like Chicago has? Evanston has nearly 90 parks and tot lots, but fewer than 300 community garden plots with fees and wait lists that remind me of the beach situation. How might Evanston help citizens grow food within walking distance of home? How can we repurpose public spaces to make this happen? And given climate change, would it make sense to shift the street cleaning schedule instead of extending it every year? For a long time, I planned large events at Northwestern on shoestring budgets. I learned a lot from a culture that knows how to save money more than share it. With new leadership coming to NU, how might we help the university reshape its relationship to the city?
15 seconds.
These are the ideas of a middle-aged Evanstonian. I'm keen to hear from younger citizens about what they need to build a life here. Their flexible thinking always humbles me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Coyne.
Thank you, and Dan is fine. Dan Coyne. I live on Monroe Street with my wife, Emily. We both moved here from Portland, Oregon 30 years ago, thinking we'd go back to the Northwest. It is beautiful, there's mountains, and there's ocean. But home is where the heart is, and we stayed, and we raised 2 children, Isaac and Julia. And I'm proud to say, despite my parenting deficits, they turned out to be pretty cool adults. They've graduated from college, and they are employed, and they are happy adult human beings. I do want to say thank you, Mayor Biss, for this transparent, open public process. I think this is very healthy, not only for our ward, but for all of Evanston, and I appreciate your modeling this. I also want to say thank you to Cicely Fleming. I think the way she was able to bravely, with courage, assess where she was and make the right decision for herself was not only good for her, but good for everyone. And I just wish, as a mental health therapist, that more of us could do the same. I also want to thank all the peers right now, my neighbors beside me. Mayor Biss, you could pick any of them and not me, and we will be in good hands. They are fantastic neighbors. A little bit about me. In the last 30 years, I've tried to strengthen communities in my circles through relational problem solving as a public and private team member through my board service and employment and elected position at Ridgeville Park District. Currently, I'm working as a mental health therapist at Evanston District 65. I am very, very lucky and fortunate to be able to teach 500 little ones, our future leaders, how to be peacemakers in our community. The older I become, and I'm 64 now, the more convinced I am the earlier we have to touch our human beings, even from birth. We need to really invest more in early intervention and also in early education. Also, I've had the opportunity to work at Chicago Public Schools in some of the poorest areas in our community and work with some of the families in the poorest conditions. I've also had the opportunity the last 30 years to work in some of the wealthiest communities like Lake Forest and Loyola Academy. It's through that I feel like I've learned a skill to be able to navigate any human being, regardless of their bank account or their status. What I try to do as a therapist is work with their heart and help them to function to become a better person to make our world better. I'm also fortunate I was able to access a couple of our universities here in town. On the south side, I don't know if Northwestern knows this, but there is a good school, University of Chicago, and that's where I got my social work degree. Also, I studied and got a master's in my educational leadership. And both of those experiences, plus my 30 years of working as a school social worker, I think I've honed my executive skills and able to navigate some of the deep issues that are before us in Evanston, and also be able to navigate some of the volumes of information that happens every time. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at some of our packets. They're thick, sometimes several hundred pages long. Also, I've had a chance to serve on various boards. Currently, I'm the vice president with the Reba Development Corporation, trying to bring more affordable housing into our community. And that's actually, I think, Mayor, probably what I'll speak about in our second question. Also, I'm a treasurer of another affordable housing program in Tinley Park, Brementown Manor, where we are providing for the last 25 years homes for through HUD programming and services for 105 different families that are seniors. I also have the experience. I'm sorry?
15 seconds.
Oh, I also have the experience as a Ridgeville commissioner bringing on your parkscape. And I just want to say the skate park is fantastic. Thank you, Juan, for that leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Hello, thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Kathy Hayes, and I'm trying to be an advocate for the Ninth Ward. For the past 35 years, I have worked in community organizations as a partner all across Chicago and Cook County, working with government entities, social service agencies, and private organizations. I want to be an advocate for the Ninth Ward because I understand that we need collaborative community investments using thoughtful, creative solutions. My roots are very layered here in Evanston. Not only was I born here and raised here, so was my daughter and 3 beautiful grandchildren who I love dearly. I was educated here in Evanston, both graduate school and undergrad. But, you know, in dealing with Evanston, I had learned a lot. I went to Foster Elementary School right during the time when there was still segregation going on. We made that transition then. We will make more transitions coming up. I'm a graduate from Kendall College, where I received my first degree. But I have to be honest with you, at 19, I was a teenage mother. And with the loving encouragement of my mentors at Fleetwood Jourdain, or Family Focus, I was able to go on to college and see more for myself than I could see by myself. After going to college, while I was there at Kendall, I did my internship right here in this building, in the planning department, as an intern, to learn about governance, the workings of a city, and the process of how to get from point A to point B. Once I graduated, I started working for the Honorable Edna Summers, who was the township supervisor, as one of her case managers for the General Assistance Program. I've worked with national programs like Sisters of Care, pilot programs that dealt with helping families and youth with mental health challenges while struggling to overcome stigmas and barriers. I have worked with Ceasefire, a violence interruption program that incorporates public health solutions to guns and gangs. I have 20 years of being on the board at Sankofa's Safe Child Initiative as an advisory member, and Sankofa has been able to build, subsidize housing, of 58 units for families that are involved with DCFS. Their program of grandparents raising grandchildren has been receiving awards throughout the state of Illinois, with wraparound services that provide counseling not only for the family members, but focus on reunification and stabilization for these families that would otherwise be victims of the court system. Yes, I have worked a long time. I am a retired woman, and I'm very proud of that. But I'm also very proud of the work that I did with the Cook County government. My first job with Cook County government was working with the state's attorney's office. I worked as a victim witness advocate in the courtrooms for domestic violence and sexual assault cases. I have worked with Cook County for 24 years, and it has been an education that can supreme no other.
15 seconds.
After I did that, I became the African American liaison, which required me to travel all over Cook County and facilitate programs and elected officials with other communities to work with collaborative efforts for not only Evanston, but all of Cook County, for the quality of life to be quantified. I am very interested.
Finish your sentence.
Oh, okay. I'm very interested. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I'm very interested in being a part of this new movement. I believe that there's a great hope and accessibility for Evanston to develop and grow to be something beautiful and wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Goodwill.
Yes, good evening. My name is Fredrick Goodwill. I am pleased to be here tonight, and I want to...
I don't think your mic is on.
There it is.
There we go.
Everybody hear me now?
Maybe.
I
Good
think so.
evening, Mayor Biss, and Evanston staff, and most importantly, good evening to the residents of Evanston, and particularly those residents of the 9th Ward, my ward. I came to Chicago about 30 years ago from New England. I grew up in a small town in Maine, and the product of public schools, and later graduated from college and law school, as well as graduate law school in and around the Boston area. I am a 22-year resident of Evanston, 17 in the 9th Ward, and when I grew up in Maine, I'm the son of a Republican and a radical anti-war feminist who canceled the vote of her husband. I love both my parents, but like my other two siblings, I fell firmly into the camp of my mom. So since early age, I, understood what it meant to work for my own my efforts, and I, when I was in every, usually what happened is that when I was endeavoring to do something, I usually did it on my own. When I was young, I started a landscaping business. I worked in a warehouse. My parents didn't necessarily have the wherewithal to send me to college, so I worked my way through high school, saved money, and then paid for my own schooling in undergraduate, law school, as well as graduate school. So I know what it means to work hard and realize the efforts of my work. Then right now, I am about 10 years into my solo practice. I am what I consider to be a neighborhood lawyer now. I do all kinds of everything. I solve problems on a smaller level for individuals and also for local businesses. And for 25 years prior, I was practiced mostly environmental law, and I consider it to be what I called gray hat work. There was an environmental component that was part of my practice, but I wasn't necessarily, on the enforcement side or the defendant side, but I, helped resolve disputes around major environmental concerns all over the country, worked on a lot of Superfund issues, and one of the most rewarding parts of my work was working on environmental justice. When I was in law school, I did my law school law journal article on environmental justice, and there were very few, efforts. There were only a couple of books that came out during that time, but but I focused my attention on civil rights. I worked on Native American issues as well as some environmental justice issues. And the reasons for wanting to serve on the council, in the past 2 years, we've had a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic and a crisis of government legitimacy brought on by the murder of George Floyd. We've spent a lot of time at home these last few years and on Zoom. I am in court almost every day for my clients, but this is one of the very few occasions that I've had to put on a suit and dress shoes. I haven't lost my COVID beard yet, but the harsher reality is that all of us have known somebody who's passed from the pandemic, but also we all have family members, et cetera, who've lost members to gun violence, family members who've been lost to gun violence. It's an important issue right now that Chicago is facing a crisis. In
15 seconds.
Yeah, and we've had recent incidents in our own town. We've had shootings on Green Bay Road. We had a shutdown recently at our own Evanston High School, and so I'd be very happy to serve the council, and I'll speak to a number of issues relative to the first and second question as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone here today, and thank you, Mayor Biss, for holding this. My name is Shawn Jones. Many of you may recognize me because I ran for this seat some 5 years ago. Before that, I spent many, many hours sitting next to Bob Seidenberg out there at the press table covering City Council for the Evanston Roundtable. I moved to Chicago from Atlanta in 2005. Like Rick, I put myself through law school. I went to night school in Atlanta and then relocated 2005 to Chicago. In 2008, I moved to Evanston, and I got the bright idea that if I wanted to learn something about community, I should write about it. And that's how, as a part-time job, I covered City Council for the Roundtable. So I have spent a lot of time in this building watching the interactions of our council members, learning how the city works, studying those 800-page packets to be prepared to write articles, on and on and on. Following my unsuccessful attempt to run for this position, I ran up against a very good and qualified candidate in Cicely Fleming, and she prevailed. I continued my solo law practice. I work here in Evanston on Church Street in downtown Evanston, so I live and work in Evanston. I was appointed by the mayor to serve on the Housing and Community Development Committee, also known as the CDBG committee, that distributes government funds to very, very good and qualified non-for-profits here in Evanston. I also, with Alderman Braithwaite, worked closely to form and serve on the Alternatives to Arrest Committee. It's a very important committee that did very good work in dealing with police interactions, primarily with our youth. And I'm very proud of that work, along with Patrick Keenan Devlin from the Moran Center. That was the three persons who started that committee. I am also work very closely with the Officer and Gentleman Academy, which is a wonderful organization here within our Evanston Police Department and within the city that does mentor work with at-risk black youth starting in middle school. They do really good work, and I'm continue to work with them to expand the programming and perhaps take it outside the city and export the model that has been so successful here into other communities. I am excited to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity to serve further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Knowles.
Thank you to the residents who are here in attendance in person and on Zoom. Mayor Biss for hosting this public forum. All of those who applied who are here with me this evening, and to former council member Cicely Fleming for her years of service. Good evening and buenas noches. My name is Sebastian Knowles. I'm a 21-year resident of the 9th Ward, soon-to-be graduate of Purdue University, majoring in accounting and political science with a minor in sociology. I'm most known for running for mayor of Evanston back in 2021 and have since become a community activist here in Evanston. My parents, Anna and Christian Knowles, moved to Evanston in 2001, looking to find a community that was removed from the busy life of Chicago. Instead, they found a community that was filled with neighbors who shaped me into the individual I am today, and for that, I am so incredibly thankful. For the past 2 years, residents have seen me on the campaign trail, at public comment addressing issues facing Evanston residents, holding educational forums with Community Alliance for Better Government to discuss complex issues, advocating for youth participation in the political process, working within the Governor's Office of Equity to facilitate the implementation of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility initiatives across Illinois' state agencies, boards, and commissions, and so much more. Each of these experiences have expanded my critical thinking, organizational, and leadership skills. I have devoted time, effort, and energy into serving those around me. And this open city council seat is giving an opportunity for the residents of Evanston to see positive change, addressing issues such as affordability, public safety, accountability and transparency, and community engagement, with immediate focuses in the first year of office being the hiring of the next city manager, working with City Council to negotiate payment in lieu of taxes programs for Northwestern and other non-taxable bodies, building relationships between council, staff, and residents, performing an equity analysis of all existing programs in preparation for our next budget, holding a Black and Brown Solidarity event to prepare or to perform cultural exchanges and increase community relationships and participations in local government, and create a website in English and in Spanish that gives supports to residents, which I have already completed. During this process, I have had the opportunity to meet with hundreds of residents, collecting over 150 signatures in support of this appointment. We've also held meet and greets, talking about issues ranging from the city manager search to snow removal and parking tickets. The 9th Ward and the entirety of Evanston needs a representative that leads with compassion, integrity, and fortitude, has a proven record of advocating for residents, understands City Council and has experience building relationships and balancing them, and most importantly, knows and understands the issues that face our community. These experiences, qualifications, and skills have prepared me for this moment, and it would be an honor to dutifully serve those who have uplifted me my entire life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this brings us to the first of our two questions, which again, Mr. Knowles will be the first to answer, and we'll head back down the dais from your left to your right. And just to refresh, this question is, how do you plan to communicate with and engage residents of the ward, and to do so in a way that is lives up to the legacy of Councilmember Fleming and also enables you to maintain a balance that is sustainable over the long term? Everyone has as much as or as little less than as you prefer, 3 minutes to answer this question. Go ahead, Mr. Knowles.
Thank you. As you said before, these are large shoes to fill. Councilmember Fleming did an incredible job of communicating with residents, and I want to continue that work and even expand on it. We have our ward meetings that happen throughout the month, but I want to expand those and hold formal office hours. Being in college, it's given me the opportunity to have office hours with my professors, times and opportunities to come in and discuss key problems that I have, whether that's in class or just in the world around me. And I believe that having office hours on a weekly basis gives a concrete schedule where residents feel that I can block off my time and have a conversation with my council member. And along with holding individual appointments as well, because I think it's important that residents are able to see their elected official when they need it. But I do want to emphasize that it's important to balance that work-life relationship, that this is a part-time position, and we have families, we have jobs, we have our professions. So it's an integral that also taking time to look at our residents and understand their problems, their wants and needs, but to look out for our own as well. As I mentioned prior, I've already established a website, sebastianknowles.com, where you can request to meet me, whether that's by appointment or for any reason, and just have a conversation. Our meet and greets were a great opportunity to showcase those types of conversations where it wasn't just residents talking at me or me talking at residents, that it was a collaborative session where we were actually able to get solutions to many of the problems that they faced. So those are some of the core steps. And for the larger entirety of Evanston, it's coordinating events such as a Black and Brown Solidarity event in the 9th Ward. That 17% of the 9th Ward is Black and 13% is Hispanic descent. That these are two large communities that are in the 9th Ward and throughout Evanston, that we have an opportunity to engage them more so in the political process that they've been left out of historically, and learn more about our neighbors altogether. And finally, it's working as a city council to address the needs of Evanston residents, that residents have felt that we've been at times lacking in our communication. So holding quarterly or biannual town hall meetings with city council where residents can bring up their comments, suggestions, problems that they're facing that go beyond just public comment, that it's an interactive, collaborative experience between city council, city staff, and residents, so we can see meaningful change happen in Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
All right, there are multiple reasons that the residents would want to communicate with their council member. And there are reasons that the council member would want to communicate with the residents. The ward meetings are a good way to distribute information about what's happening in the city, to have the residents be given the opportunity to come forward and ask questions or propose ideas. But there's another component where the resident has a problem and the problem needs to be addressed. These are, and I saw Alderman Nusma is doing this, the office hours that were suggested are a very good idea. Have a regular office hour. My office is in downtown Evanston, regular hour every week where people can come to downtown Evanston and bring their problems or their suggestions or their questions. That is a great way to communicate. I also like what Alderman Rainey had in the 8th Ward, which is a message board that was very active. People were able to communicate with each other and with the alderman and get answers right away. I would like that sort of message board made available in the 9th Ward as well. But I want to stress that the communication is multi-directional. People are coming to us. We are taking their problems to the city to try and reach a solution. Like Rick, in my day job, what I do is try to solve problems for individuals or businesses in the legal realm. But many times they have problems with local government as well. They have problems with garbage pickup, with snow removal, with fly dumping. It goes on and on and on. We have to be responsive. We have to know who to talk to in the city to get things addressed. And I am more than willing to step in and make sure that the communication goes both ways, that if there are problems, people know that they can come to their council member and get their problem addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwill.
Thank you. As Shawn mentioned here, I have a very similar approach in my law practice. Whenever a client approaches me and it comes with an issue that I need to address, the important thing that I need to do is sit and listen and understand exactly what they're presenting as far as a matter, an issue, and as far as understanding exactly what they need. And then I learn to advocate on their behalf. I learn exactly what the issues that they're facing, and I have to face the challenges of being in a courtroom. This is a quite different setting. So first is to try to be able to understand what the needs of my clients. So as far as being able to kind of engage in some further outreach as a council member, there are lots of things that have already been mentioned. Certainly some big shoes are being filled. I was really pleased and surprised at how often there were ward meetings in the 9th Ward, and there were oftentimes I wasn't able to attend, but there was always literature out from Council Member Fleming, and there certainly was plenty of opportunity to contact her, and I intend to kind of further that legacy, as Sebastian had said as well. But it's also important to engage in other activities, like make sure people have a forum such as town halls, et cetera, allowing people to share on an individual basis as well as a kind of a group basis. I know we've all had some difficulty gathering generally as members of our ward and members of our city, and it's been difficult. But I think one of the things that's important to do is to combine the one-on-one and the in-person meetings together with some outreach, that we can undertake, through communications online, and being able to set up things like hotlines, et cetera, that allow people to have direct contact with their council member. And it's important also for me to get out in the community. And my neighborhood, one of the best ways I've known to communicate is to be at a dog park with my dog. And so that's part of the initial, kind of the commonplace outreach that we all have, is just being in the neighborhood with our fellow neighbors, and to be able to listen to what the needs are and understand even on a smaller scale, because we do have issues that arise as far as, garbage pickup and things like that we need to address on a regular basis. So I intend to make myself available
15 seconds.
and apply the skills that I've learned as a solo practitioner in addressing the needs of my clients, but also be able to do that for members of the Ninth Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Okay, I got the button on. Thank you. Communication is a necessity. We have gone to social communication and social media. We have had message boards and everything else, but nothing transcends communication as does face-to-face interpersonal reaction and interaction with people. That's being consistent as being a part of your community and in your community, talking with and talking around other people. I cannot tell you how many times I was in a grocery store and stopped at the broccoli for some advice or some information. Sometimes that's the way communication works. You meet people where they are. I believe in social media. I believe in town hall meetings. I believe in workshops for us to talk and discuss and get a real understanding as to what the residents want for ward map issues, or for issues regarding how to hire the next city manager. These are important issues that deal with their day-to-day liberties. And and some will not come to you during an office hour. But I believe in office hours. I believe in times where they can come comfortably to you. And I also believe in being accessible for times when they want anonymity. Some people don't want to be on blast. Some people want to sit and talk to you about the trouble that they're having with their grandchildren, or needs for their elderly parent, in privacy and concern. Some people need empathy. Some people need a little bit more hand-holding. Those may not be the people that'll come to the ward meeting, but it's my goal and my training to be accessible to individuals and to meet them where they are. Whether it is a ward meeting that's consistent, whether it's a social event, yoga in the park, that's consistent, whether it's at the grocery store, but to be consistent. I cannot do this job as an advocate without my partner, which is my community. And they will guide me as to what is comfortable for their communication. And that's where I will meet them.
Thank you. Mr. Coyne.
Thank you. How will I engage my Ninth Ward constituents? And frankly, all of us would, whoever is in this role, would also represent 1/9 or 1/10 of the city's budget and policy and procedures, and overseeing the city manager. So in a sense, how would I engage all of city of Evanston constituents? And I would like to think that I would continue to do it the way I have the last 30 years, with a compassionate heart, with a mind that can try try to understand where the issue is and where it's coming and where it's going, and also communicate a path forward for a win-win solution. I would like to be able to follow in Cicely's footsteps in the sense of communicating directly, if I could, at least at a monthly basis with a ward meeting. Now, I have to work this out with Melissa Wynn in the 3rd, but I'd like to have my meetings at the Firehouse Grill. But I don't know what the city rules are. We'll have to check with legal. But of course, as our boundary maps change for 2025 over the next 3 years because of the new census, I believe that our 9th Ward can expand, so we may indeed be able to go all the way to Chicago Avenue in the future. I also hope to have a newsletter on a regular basis to communicate what is going on, what are the top issues here in Evanston. I also want to be available, like I have been the last 30 years, to all my neighbors, regardless of their bank account, regardless of their particular life situation. My wife Emily and I have tried to reach out to all those in need in our community, including new refugees from wars, from tragedy, from divorce, from all kinds of situations through some of the housing that we have available to us in our neighborhood. And in my opinion, it's that approach, and I believe the same thing you believe, Kathy, yet really resonated with me. Sitting down with somebody where they're at is imperative, and I won't change that. Now, I will have a new role, of course, if I am in this position working as our ward council member. I have to keep good boundaries and role clarification. I cannot represent the whole city. I can represent Dan Coyne's opinion. I can represent what our city has decided and what our policy and procedures are. But I will need to be kept in check to not misrepresent what the city has decided and what we haven't.
15 seconds.
Pardon?
15 seconds.
15 seconds. That said, when it comes to the Cubs or the White Sox, some of my neighbors may think that the White Sox are all that. I'm a Cubs believer. I have been all my life, but I'm still willing to let the White Sox members of my community come to my house. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe they're also allowed in the Firehouse Grill. Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. I share a lot of the same thoughts as my peers here, my neighbors. Transparency and access are the two sort of foundations for communication, and it seems to me that as a council person, my whole role is to be a communicator and a conduit for providing services to my neighbors. So as a college counselor, I can't help but think that privacy and discretion are always top form, and making sure that I'm always well informed before I direct somebody somewhere, and knowing really where my role begins and ends. My son attends Chute Middle School. He's a 6th grader, and at orientation, Mr. Matt got up in front of all of us and gave out his cell phone number. At first, I thought this was mildly insane, and then it occurred to me this is not actually. This is true access, because he knows that people are going to take care with the texts and phone calls that they make to him. And I think that is an incredible starting point for so many people. My students do not answer me in email, but they will answer me through text. Social media is very powerful with them, whereas I have people, parents who always wanted to talk to me face to face. In some ways it's generational, but in other ways it's just personal style. And I am ready to adapt in any way. I think if we have the ability, if it fits within the boundaries of our work, I would love to add social media to what we do as a way of asking questions and creating conversation, but also pushing out information. I want to just build that into, personal meetings, something like office hours, or coffee. I'm more than happy to Zoom. I like seeing people's faces. I would rather see a face than a mask, to be honest. And I would like to do things like block parties. I mean, I think Evanston just excels at the block party, and I think there's ways to make that more of a community-minded thing in the Ninth Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Mr. Gergaris.
All right. When I thought about this position, one of the things I really thought was important was that to do this, I wanted to make it people feel like the city is working for them. And so, my focus, I think, is as far as like sitting on the city council and having the transparency. I'm in preparation for this, I've been reading like the packets and making sure that, kind of going through all the different things and saying and thinking of how, like, after every meeting, I plan on reporting back like why I voted these ways. It's there's some information out to look at past votes, but I want to be very transparent going forward about this is the way I voted, and also having the lines of communication so that if people want to talk to me about my vote, I'm more than open to discuss that with them. The idea of having, obviously, the ward meetings either on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, or when something comes up. That is, that's probably the most important function of the ward meetings. And then also, one thing that, as a member of Evanston Latinos, we've been advocating for quite a few years, accessibility to folks who are not native English speakers. It's, I've watched a bunch of city meetings. There's no translator. That's a huge problem, and people wonder why people feel disenfranchised and don't show up. And I can communicate in Spanish, and I'm there for the community that way. Also, a lot of another big portion of the job is also, I think, helping people navigate services. So as a homeowner, I have that experience of dealing with 311. But I think, keeping an open lines of communication. Also, I wear a lot of hats in the community, so a lot of people know me, and I'm an approachable person.
Thank you. This brings us to our final question, where again, everyone will have 3 minutes, this time starting from Mr. Gergaris and moving down towards Mr. Knowles. And again, this question is simple. What's the one thing you're most excited to lead on? Why is that important both to you and to the ward? And how do you plan to make progress on that issue? Go ahead.
Kind of building on my last answer, I came to Evanston because of all the opportunities here, great schools, beautiful neighborhood, and that's the case with everyone who lives here. Everyone loves the town. My main focus is I want to keep Evanston affordable for everyone, and like I said, this is this is a town I want everyone to experience and stay here. So working on affordable housing initiatives, and being mindful of the impact of decisions. So always taking things and looking at your decisions with an equity lens. Things on the surface might appear great, but you don't know what the effect might be to others. And that's, just keeping Evanston. I don't want anyone to have to move from Evanston based on a decision that I made. And there's, especially in the pandemic, there are a lot of families who, are struggling. So I want to advocate for those people.
Thank you very much. Ms. Campbell.
Thanks. I'm probably a glutton in some way, but I think this person who would come into this role is going to have to be right there, right in the middle of a very important job search for city manager. And I think it's going to require some thinking that, is really maybe outside the box. And it's going to require some big philosophical thought. Mayor Biss and I were talking about this earlier. It's like, is this about a particular specialization in managing a city, or is this about management and all of, that sort of strategic planning, that long view that you need, and then that ability to communicate to all parties who are involved? Is that more of a generalist thing? I have sat on really successful job searches when I was in the university setting, some that were like molasses and seemed to take forever and we lost terrific candidates, and then others that happened very cleanly, efficiently, and in some really surprising ways. And I would love to take my experience with that and apply it to this. And I would take, it just seems like a profoundly heavy responsibility, but one that I think is also quite exciting. And then the second thing that I'm really keen on is really seeing how environmental justice connects with social justice at every turn. Because if we don't have an environment that is healthy for us, with healthy land, clean water, all of it, then we don't have the ability to really take care of each other at a fundamental level. So I know it sounds like I'm asking us to all make dirt and compost and do silly things like that, but I think that there's a real discrepancy in how we do that across Evanston, and I think it's a starting point for creating our own food sources and everything else. So I really want to see how that looks for sustainability in Evanston and how you link it to social justice. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Coyne.
Thank you. It's a tough answer. Simple question. What's most important? What's pressing on my heart for our city? The list is long, but I have to just focus and follow your question and limit my answer to just one. But many issues pop up. The budget, filling the employee positions in our police department. Our poor officers are putting in 12-hour shifts, but we expect them to remain professional 24/7. We have fire department personnel, minus an ambulance unit that they lost a number of years ago, and so they are spread thin. We have employees that are feeling pressure left and right. We may be now between 700 and 800 employees. We have to find a way to make sure they feel empowered to implement our policy and procedures. And that's easier said than done. And I don't claim to have an answer. But in answer to your question, Mayor Biss, I have to be honest, the most passionate aspect of my work right now is affordable housing. How can we help our citizens afford to live here? We're not all earning $200,000 or $300,000 a year. Not all of us can afford $4,000 a month rent. I know that if I become a council member, I'll have to recuse myself if any monetary issues or donations occur regarding the board that I'm on with Reba Development. But that doesn't mean I can't still look for models similar to what we've already done. For the last 60 years at Reba, we've tried to offer affordable housing to all community members. We currently have over 200 properties where we're doing that. We now have a proposal that we've partnered with SEPA, which is a really fantastic affordable housing partner in all of Lake County and Cook County. They have over 1,800 affordable housing units. We've partnered with a new proposal for 52 new affordable housing units in our backyard here in Evanston. There are ways, in my opinion, as a council member, that I can bring some of these partners together, both private and public, so that we can, in a substantive way, meet the needs of our neighbors who should not be living in their cars, should not have to be crowded in somebody's garage, but should have a home with dignity. As a matter of fact, I believe that affordable housing is the quickest way to build equity and wealth in our minority communities, those who are marginalized, those who haven't had that intergenerational wealth that I was afforded because my parents owned homes.
15 seconds.
I think that if we can find ways to help our neighbors to actually buy a home and build equity, that is the surest way for them to pass on the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes.
Hi. I am so excited. Let me tell you why. I'm so excited because the people that are sitting up here are extremely passionate about many things that they've done on their day-to-day lives. And they've used what they've learned up to this point to influence not only the public's thoughts, but my thoughts and showing their hearts. And that takes a lot of courage. And I appreciate that. At the same point, I must say, to answer your question, is that I'm extremely greedy. I want to do it all. I want to do it all. And as a newly retired lady, I get to have time to follow as many passions as I so desire. I have worked in housing, and housing is a passion. And I was a first-time homeowner, first-generation homeowner with my immediate family. That is important. That is an issue of achievement and dignity and wealth that makes a difference. But I also have been in dire straits where I was couch surfing from pillar to post to try to make ends meet. And sometimes, many times, they didn't. Now, I've been blessed. I'm not going to lie and say that I've been blessed to be able to achieve some of the personal goals that many people take for granted. But I want to see everyone to have that ability to be able to do these things. My main issue is public safety, because if you don't feel safe, if you aren't in a place of comfort, you won't be able to achieve any of those issues. Health. I've worked in a health organization for almost 2 decades, and I have seen people come from different countries, from different parts of the city, from different parts of the state, trying to get equity in health care because other places have turned them away. They were either underinsured or uninsured. Health, there is no substitute for. Lastly, I have to say staffing. If I am an advocate or honored to become an advocate for this city in this position, I need a team of support that I can go to give answers to the community. I can't just sit and say, well, I don't know, call 311. That's not good. I need to be able to communicate with them that not only can you call 311, but why don't we go over here and see and walk you through what's necessary for you to be able to achieve what you're trying to do.
15 seconds.
I knew that was coming. So I have a catalog of things that I would love to do and learn more about and share with our community, whether it is the Black and Brown community, the Asian community, or our just basic residents here in the 9th Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwill.
Thank you. As has been said before, it's a simple question, but a difficult answer.
Yes.
And I think probably the best way that I approach this is with a simple premise that there's an opportunity gap, not only in our city, but in our country, and certainly in the area of housing. That's an area that I think is really important, as Dan had said. And what's interesting is that when you think about affordable housing, you think about access to equity in the home and also being able to get a mortgage, things like that. But there are people who are living in homes right now that are facing a multitude of environmental issues that I think is something to consider when we're addressing this opportunity gap, because in just a few years, in 6 years, we're supposed to develop by law a plan to address the issue of lead pipes in our city, and the impact that the aged system has on those who are marginalized and those who don't have the accident of birth that I had. My home was never close to any kind of industry and any kind of polluting industry. but we have a situation that has arisen where people don't necessarily have access to those areas of our city that are away from or apart from those particular industries that cause problems that are multitudinous. You have issues that that people face with their health and well-being, and certainly their mental health issues as well. But one of the things that I found compelling as well to address that issue, which is, if I were to pick one, I would say the intersection between housing and environmental justice. And again, it's the impact that people face because they don't have the mobility that I have. They don't have the ability to move from one location to the other or away from the locations where they're living. So one of the things that's really important is to address that opportunity gap on a larger scale, but then understand and be adaptable as those issues come up, and understand that there are moments when a crisis will develop, and also there's opportunities that exist now to avoid those crises as they're approaching. One of the things that I just recently last night understood a little bit more about was a very interesting article about the one-stop shop.
15 seconds.
And that's another important piece where somebody could come in and gain and understand what it means to have home ownership, but also everything else that goes along with it. So the one-stop shop is a very important feature too. So that intersection between housing and environmental justice is what my focus would be.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Well, I agree and would follow most of what's come before, particularly the city manager search and the affordable housing, which ties in with staffing and making sure that this city functions properly. As my friend Clark always says, Evanston should be a shining city on the hill. We have so many resources here with the lake, a world-class university, a L system and metro that takes us to one of the best cities in the world. But my passion is in small business development and getting the butcher paper off those storefronts downtown. Our property tax burden is a big, big part of our affordable housing problem. Generating sales tax revenue limits property taxes. Right now, we generate 16 to 18 million in sales tax. We get a little over 6.5 million from property taxes that go into our general fund. If we increase our sales tax revenue, we don't have to increase property taxes. Win-win. But also, we have an opportunity to have a brand new, vibrant, exciting downtown Evanston that people want to come to. We have a new movie theater coming in. It gives us real opportunity. We have the North Lake Theater in process of developing their idea. My passion is in working with small businesses so that people can realize their dreams. One of the things I do is I'm a small business coach down in Hyde Park for Sunshine Enterprises, and I work with predominantly minority entrepreneurs who are working hard and trying to realize their dream to start a new business, and then employing more people, putting people to work, creating that vibrant downtown city on a hill, Evanston, that we all want and our residents really move here for. So that is my passion, but it's all tied in with what you all are talking about. The city manager is going to be critical to that. One of our key roles as a city government is to make sure that our residents are safe. Public safety is a critical piece to this. All of this ties in together, but what I am excited about working on is developing our downtown and getting it back to fully realized, vibrant, growing, exciting city. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Knowles.
Yes, after doing about a month and a half worth of research and outreach to residents during this process, it seems to be that one of the chief concerns of Ninth Ward residents is what I like to call affordability and livability, that this is talking about residents who currently live in Evanston and how expensive it is to live here, and new residents who are seeking to live here, that if we don't have an affordable city, they can't move here and enjoy the same experiences that we all have here. And your words during our conversation, Mayor Biss, stuck with me, that our most valuable assets in our community are our residents. And if we aren't securing them and their future, then what are we doing as a city? We see that the median property tax rate in Evanston is about $5,000, about $3,600 in the 9th Ward, but in the rest of the state, it's about $2,200. That we have a high expenditure to resident rate. And with 60% of Evanston being taxable land, a lot of the burden begins to be shouldered on Evanston residents, and purely them, which results in residents being priced out of Evanston. So what I would like to do within the first year of being in office is looking at new revenue streams, whether that's being a part of the pilot program, the Payment in Lieu of Taxes Task Force that Councilmember Kelly has been seeking to create, that would essentially give a new revenue stream for some nonprofit entities in Evanston, so that they would be paying or contributing to our overall budget, that we saw a $2.5 million deficit this previous budget season. And entities such as Northwestern, who take up about $30 million worth of non-taxable land, that they can contribute to alleviate the burden of Evanston residents, that we can see property taxes decline, but at the same time providing more social services to residents as well. One of the initiatives that I pushed for when I was running for mayor of Evanston was the Raising a Child Together initiative, that's looking at early child care programs through our Parks and Recreation Department and around the city of Evanston, and making early child care more affordable. Because not only does that ease the burden of Evanston residents, but at the same time that contributes to our public safety issue, that we have residents and their children that are becoming more educated as they get into elementary school and in those core years of life. So
15 seconds.
all of these, again, are integral to making Evanston a better place overall. And I am committed to selecting a city manager who has experience with dealing with budget constraints and is creative in generating new revenue streams overall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been a very aggravating evening for me because y'all have made my choice extremely difficult. This has been very, very impressive, and you know, sort of corny tongue-in-cheek jokes aside, it's been very uplifting for me to see this group of really different people, all very thoughtful, all committed to public service, all wanting to give of themselves, and all speaking in really different and inspiring ways about how we can work together to make things better in this pretty special community. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your willingness to be a part of this. Obviously, given the weather, there's not an enormous number of people here in the room, though in fact there are some, which is remarkable and wonderful. Yes, let's applaud our guests. I was told that between the various mechanisms that this can be viewed online, there were 75 people watching this forum, which I think, again, tells you something about our community. Maybe nothing that would surprise any of us, but also something that we should remember and cherish. It's something that will become extremely relevant in the daily life of at least one of the 7 of you pretty soon. So thanks again to all those who watched, all those who care, all those who are following, and the 7 of you up here who are offering your service to our community. A word about the process moving forward. Right now, the 9th Ward has no council member. That's not an ideal situation. So I want to wrap this up as quickly as possible to ensure that the residents have the representation they're entitled to as quickly as possible. A member of council needs to be approved by the city council upon appointment. Our next regular council meeting is on February 28th. That's a week from Monday. And my intent would be to have appointed someone, well before that, by the middle of the previous week, so that at the beginning of the February 28th council meeting, the person can be voted upon. I have no doubt, based on what we've seen tonight, that whoever is chosen, we could draw one of the 7 names out of a hat, and that would be someone who would, I think, get enthusiastic approval from our city council. And that person, one of the 7 of you, would take office that evening, participate in that meeting, and then be off to the races. So that's the calendar that I have in mind. I don't think there's any reason why that could change, though if something does come up, of course, I'll notify all of you immediately. And once again, I just want to say a big, big thank you to all of you for your love of Evanston and your willingness to give of yourselves to make the community
Mayor
better.
Biss, could you just explain for us, wasn't there an 8th neighbor interested? Is he on Zoom or did he drop out?
To my knowledge, he's not on Zoom. He has not responded to, all of you know I've emailed you probably more than you wanted during the course of the time since you sent your application in. He has not responded to those emails, and so I presume that he's lost interest. But I'm still here if he wants to reach back out and continue that dialogue. Thanks very much. Be safe in this weather. Wishing everyone a safe, healthy, and wonderful weekend. And thank you again to all of you.